Hello friends! Today I thought it would be fun to share 10 of my favourite pieces of fiction with you. Now before we dive in, this is not a top 10, just 10 of my favourite. Many of these are by the same author, which is very much a reflection of my personal taste. This is entirely subjective, so if your favourites don't make the list, don't worry, drop them in the comments below. Now let's get into it. Number 10. X-Men, The Dark Phoenix Saga by Chris Claremont and John Byrne. We're kicking this list off with something a little different than the rest of it. A comic book, specifically The Dark Phoenix Saga, which ran in Uncanny X-Men from 1980. If you only know this story from the films, first off, I feel sorry for you. Secondly, I would really encourage you to go back and read the source material, because it's something really special. The story follows Jean Grey, one of the original X-Men, as she's transformed by a cosmic force and manipulation by the Hellfire Club into the near-omnipotent Dark Phoenix. What makes it so compelling isn't the spectacle, though there's plenty of that. It's the tragedy at the heart of it. Jean is one of the most beloved members of the team, and watching the people who care about her be powerless to save her is genuinely heartbreaking. Claremont and Byrne understood that the best superhero stories are about the people, not really the powers. Now we move on to number 9, which is His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. His Dark Materials, which comprises of The Northern Lights, The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass, is one of those rare series that works on multiple levels. On the surface, it's a thrilling adventure following a young girl named Lyra across parallel worlds. Underneath, it is a profound exploration of free will, organised religion, growing up, and the nature of the human soul. Literally in this case, since every person in Lyra's world has their soul manifested as an animal companion called a demon. What I love most about Pullman's writing is that he never talks down to his audience. He raises enormous philosophical questions and trusts you to sit with them. His deep critique of the church, in the form of the Magisterium, is particularly thought-provoking. If you haven't picked this up, I would highly recommend it. Now on to number 8, which is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. The Hobbit is often seen as the lighter, simpler companion to The Lord of the Rings, and in some ways it is, but I think that really undersells it. Bilbo is one of fiction's most endearing main characters precisely because he is so ordinary. He didn't want to go on an adventure, he wanted his armchair and his second breakfast, and yet he got dragged into an adventure anyway. There's a warmth and wit to Tolkien's writing here that I find irresistible. It introduces us to Middle-earth through the eyes of someone who's just as baffled by it as we are. It is the book I would hand someone who has never read fantasy before, because it tells such a simple story, and it never fails to put me in a good mood. Now, we move on to number 7, which is How to Train Your Dragon by Cressida Cowell. I think this one is genuinely overlooked, and I believe the films have a lot to do with that. The DreamWorks movies are wonderful, no doubt, but they are quite different from Cowell's original books, and a lot of people don't realise the books exist as their own thing. They're funny, inventive, and surprisingly moving. There's a real message about the value of kindness and brains over brute force. The series spans 12 books, and I must admit, I have a huge soft spot for them all. Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard takes our number 6 spot. The series, by Rick Riordan, features 16-year-old homeless boy from Boston, Magnus Chase, who discovers that he is the son of a Norse god. That is only the beginning of the adventure, however. Norse mythology is notoriously difficult to adapt. The source material is fragmentary, strange, and deeply weird in ways that don't always translate neatly into modern storytelling, but I feel Riordan manages this brilliantly. Riordan leans into the absurdity of the mythology, whilst also treating the emotional stakes with genuine sincerity. Further, the connections with Riordan's other series, namely Percy Jackson and the Olympians, feel natural rather than forced for fans to have something to point at and go, hey, I know who that is. The exploration of Islam through the character of Sam is also a fascinating thing to see in a work so largely focused on Norse myth. The cast feels wonderfully diverse and real. It is also genuinely funny. If you have ever been curious about Norse mythology but found the original text a bit dense, then this is a fantastic entry point. Rounding out our number 5 spot is Kane Chronicles by Rick Riordan. Yes, I know, another Riordan book series, but this is one I wish to highlight because I feel it is underappreciated even within his own catalogue. The Kane Chronicles follows siblings Carter and Sadie Kane, who discover they are descended from ancient Egyptian pharaohs and are drawn into a conflict involving the gods of Egypt. What makes it stand out is the framing device. The books are presented as audio recordings made by Carter and Sadie themselves, which means they interrupt each other, correct each other, and argue throughout the whole narrative. It gives it an energy that feels genuinely fresh. Egyptian mythology is also much less familiar to readers than Greek or Norse will be, which makes the world building feel exciting and surprising. It's a really underappreciated trilogy, and I would highly encourage you to at the very least have a look into it. Number 4. Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling. Or Rowling, I am not sure. I mean, of course it's on the list. I think anyone who grew up reading in the late 90s through the 2010s has a relationship with Harry Potter, and I am no different. There's a reason these books captures an entire generation. Rowling built a world that felt genuinely lived in and real, full of details that rewarded careful reading, and she told a story that grew up alongside its readers. The later books deal with loss, grief, institutional failure, and the weight of expectation in ways that I think will only hit harder the older I get. The craft of plotting is remarkable, and the emotional core of Harry's story is genuinely powerful. Heroes of Olympus by Rick Riordan is taking our number 3 spot. Yes, I know, another Riordan series. I did warn you this would happen, didn't I? Heroes of Olympus is a 5-book sequel series to Percy Jackson that expands the world significantly by introducing the Roman counterparts to the Greek gods and a whole new cast of demigod heroes. What makes it special is the ambition. Riordan juggles 7 main protagonists, each with distinct voices, backstories, and arcs, and for the most part pulls it off remarkably well. The stakes are higher than in the original series, and the emotional moments hit harder because we've had time to grow attached to these characters. The Mark of Athena, and the House of Hades in particular, contains some of the best character work Riordan has ever done. If you loved Percy Jackson and haven't continued into this series, trust me, you are missing out. Speaking of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, this is going to take our number 2 spot. Again, it's by Rick Riordan, but this is where it all began. Percy Jackson and the Olympians follows Percy Jackson, who is a dyslexic ADHD 12-year-old who gradually grows up throughout the course of the series. I relate a lot to Percy, honestly, because I also have dyslexia and ADHD. In the first book, Percy discovers he is the son of Poseidon and gets thrown headfirst into a world of Greek gods, monsters, and ancient prophecies. In a word, it's fabulous. Riordan's genius in how he reimagines the mythology shines bright here. The gods are still the gods, but they've moved with Western civilization and are now based in America, atop the Empire State Building. It's a series with an enormous amount of heart, a protagonist who is wonderfully loyal and delightfully dumb in the best possible ways, and a genuine message of how the things that make you different are not weaknesses. The friendship between Percy, Annabeth, Grover, and the rest of the cast are some of my favourite in all of fiction. These books genuinely make me feel happy every single time I read them. And of course, who else could take our number 1 spot? than The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. Of course we end here. Tolkien is often called the father of modern fantasy, and while that is a bit of an oversimplification, it speaks to the scale of his influence. This is a story about the end of an age, about beauty passing out of the world, about the cost of carrying great burdens, and about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, not because they are destined to, but because they chose to. It is the top of the list for a reason. If you haven't read it, please read it, I implore you. If you have, maybe it's time to read it again. Well, that's my list, friends. 10 pieces of fiction that have meant a great deal to me. Let me know in the comments which ones you've read, which ones you disagree with, and which you would put on your own list. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.